Adventures of the Decepticons Pet Ghost by Played Crowd 5610. Part 3 of Hunting the Nemesis. Chapter 3. Take Flight. Summary. Danny takes Starscream for a flight to help blow off some steam. And maybe there's more to Danny's backstory than meets the eye. Danny was sitting on a shelf in Starscream's room, which had been repurposed over the last couple of weeks to function as Danny's personal space. It took up a small corner of the Khan's quarters and was out of the way enough that Starscream didn't almost trip over Danny every time he paced his little circles around the room. Danny's eyes tracked the Seeker as he went back and forth, clinking on the metal flooring. With every step, tension seemed to cling to Starscream's frame, almost enough that Danny could sense it. Through his repressed yamp field, his wings twitched in irritation. He muttered to himself as he reviewed reports. Danny sighed and pushed himself out of the old ratted beanbag he was sitting in, one of the only items to his name at this moment, and walked over to the edge of the shelf, stuffing his hands in his pocket. You know, for someone who likes to rant about how he should be in charge, you don't look like you're enjoying the whole second-in-command thing. Starscream paused mid-step, his optics narrowing as he glanced over at Danny. It's none of your concern, and I have far more important things to worry about than engaging in idle chatter. He waved the service dismissively in Danny's direction. Do you not have your own data pads to read over? Or better yet, a place to go, down on Earth, where you can leave me to do my job in peace? Danny rolled his eyes and straightened up. Yeah, I get it. You're a big, bad Decepticon who doesn't need a break, right? He waved his hands dismissively. But seriously, Screamy, you've been pacing like a caged tiger for hours. What's the deal? Starscream bristled at first, but after a moment his wings dropped, his frames tense but less defensive. Let's just say, the weight of leadership can be taxing. Danny swayed back and forth on his feet. Right, taxing. You mean exhausting. He paused. Look, how about you blow off some steam? Let's go for a flight. It can do wonders to clear your head. That was when Danny felt almost relaxed anyway. He was sure it was similar for Starscream, since he knew how much the Meg loved to fly, especially with how angsty and stressed he was when his wings had been crushed and he couldn't get out of the medbay for days. Starscream blinked, clearly surprised by the suggestion. A flight? With you? Danny shrugged, grinning. Why not? You get some air, I get some fun, everyone wins. Come, when's the last time you did something just to enjoy it? Starscream's optic flitted between his datapad and then Danny and back again. After a long pause, the Seeker sighed. Very well, but only for a while. Soundwave will have my helm on a planet if I don't finish these before the next solar circle. Danny laughed and pumped a fist in the air. I've always wanted to fly in a jet. Starscream picked him up and tossed him haphazardly into his subspace before heading towards the door. Don't think this will be a regular thing. You are lucky I need to stretch my wings often, or I will lock up. The voice reverberated around Danny, who just smiled to himself in response. The human lounged in Starscream's cockpit, eyes crossed behind his head, like he was sunbathing on a beach, not soaring thousands of feet in the air. Then he looked up at the bright blue midday sky, with the white stretches of clouds that floated by. As much as Starscream hated to admit that, the human was right. He could feel the tension leaving his frame every moment they were in the sky. This was his element. Danny laughed to himself, and Starscream redirected his attention back to him. You know, for a Decepticon who brags about being aerodynamic, I expected the ride to be smoother. Danny taunted. Starscream's engine rumbled in protest, as if offended by the jab. If you're so concerned about turbulences, perhaps you prefer to walk next time, he responded. Danny grinned, glancing down towards the Starscream's instruments. You know, I thought you would be fast in this. The human then yawned. Yawned! Starscream felt slightly foolish, taking the very obvious bait. But who was he to deny the human his true speed? Then he must have sensed his field shift at the rising challenge, because the human smirked to himself right before Starscream dived down out of the clouds. Then he jumped at a sudden drop, likely expecting Starscream to fly forward rather than down. The human's eyes widened as he fully sat up. Starscream smirked to himself at being able to surprise the human for one of the first time since they met. Once they were only a little ways above crashing into a mountain. Starscream changed trajectory and shot back up into the sky. Spinning as he did so, he went up as high as his sensors said he could safely go without damage, and dived back down before evening out. How's that for flying? Starscream asked, voice full of pride. The human laughed and smiled brightly at the excitement. That was great! He tapped the sides of Starscream's canopy. How about I show you some of my own tricks? Starscream didn't get the chance to voice his confusion before the human suddenly flicked out of visible spectrum and fell through his seat, out through the bottom of the cockpit. Starscream's system froze. He knew the human could phase. How else could he have gotten them out of the rubble all those weeks ago? But he had to be a moron to just fall out into the open sky. He was going to die. Did the human want Starscream to catch him? Starscream scanned the area and was about to dive straight down when suddenly laughter met his audios from next to him. Then he suddenly floated up next to Starscream's wings, fists of giggles escaping the human's mouth. Completely unconcerned by this spark attack, Starscream was just given, thinking the human had just killed himself for no reason. How was he supposed to know the kid could fly? I'm okay, Screamy, don't panic. The kid flew out in front of him and knocked on his windshield. Starscream was still moving, albeit not as fast, but Danny was able to keep up with him while flying backwards. The human tilted his head to the side with a smile. I don't panic. I was simply looking for where you went, Starscream said indignantly. Then he paused. I didn't know you could fly. Danny smiled lightly. Sorry, there's a lot of things I don't tell a lot of people. Most people can't do things I do, and if they find out about it, I can be in danger. Danny sighed and flew back slightly to sit on the edge of Starscream's wing, kicking his feet in the wind. I'm supporting him as he leaned back, closing his eyes. The human should be flung off the open sky being out there, and Starscream should be definitely feeling dragged enough to throw him off course. But he didn't feel anything. Strangely enough, he could hear the human clearly, even with the wind. What kind of danger? Starscream found himself asking. The human didn't seem to be afraid of anything on the Nemesis, whether that be looking into the barrel of a blaster, or egging Knockout on to try and cut his head off with a buzzsaw. This was the strangest human Starscream had ever come across. But what could put him in danger? Starscream needed to know. Not because he cared or anything, but because he needed to discover what was scarier to this human than the Decepticons. Then he laughed dryly. You may be able to tell that I'm not very normal. He then stood up and started walking along Starscream's wingspan like a balanced beam. Starscream bristled as the boot stepped across a spot he knew he couldn't reach to clean if the human got dirt there. But he decided not to comment, as he was more curious to disregard his infraction for the time being. Your lack of self-preservation is astounding, Starscream muttered, and he would have rolled his optics if he could. Danny laughed again as he held his arms out to keep balance. Lots of humans don't like things that aren't normal. They want everything to be like them. And when they come across someone who isn't, well, it doesn't end well. Starscream was puzzled. Why wouldn't the human just come out with it already? It was like he was dancing around the subject. And Starscream needed to get answers. What do you mean? The kid sighed and ran a hand through his white hair. I can get hurt or experimented on, Starscream. Other humans will hunt me down for what I am, even though I used to be one of them. Starscream could sense the kid's EM field getting more bitter and upset. They don't care, though. They think I'm a danger on them and should be extinguished along with anyone else like me, which is why I made it my mission to help protect others like me and get them somewhere safe before they get hunted down. The human walked up Starscream's dorsal stud and laid down flat on him, the back of his head leaning on the glass of his cockpit. Starscream stayed silent for a long moment, and then he didn't speak up again, staring at the sky. Why did you show me your abilities then, back in the cave and now? As far as I know, you have only ever shown them to me and no one else on the Nemesis. Starscream questioned. Because I trust you, Starscream. Then he pat his hand against the metal plating under him. Starscream processor stalled, and he would have dropped out of the sky if his coding didn't keep him in flight. In all of the Khan's life, even before the war started, he had never been told he was trustworthy. His classmates back in the academy disliked him immensely and stayed away from him, and even his tribe believed him to be untruthful at times. Which he was. Back on the Nemesis, everyone treated everyone with disgust and disdain. But this human trusts him? You know, Danny started, grabbing Starscream's attention again. I think I can fly faster than you. Starscream made an affronted noise. Please! I'm the lead air commander of the Decepticon army, and the fastest mech you will find on the Nemesis. You wouldn't be able to beat me. Starscream felt the flicker of amusement cross Danny's field. Let's race then, come on. First one to cross that tree line past the river over there wins. You're on.